Hello, good morning. I'm Victoria Wills, a teaching artist here at Lane Arts Council. Today we're going to move into lesson 3 in building worlds with paper. For today's lesson, today's project, we're going to draw from your knowledge of how living things have adapted to survive in their different environments. And then you'll select plants to build in 3D to use in your diorama stage. First, let's get started with some gentle movement. I invite you to sit tall in your chair, lengthen your spine, feel all that extra space in your neck, kind of float your head. And let's imagine that we have a bucket of paint on either side of us, and you can choose the color of paint. It could even be mixed paint. And let's dip our elbows in the paint, and then let's move our elbows around in circles and paint on the airspace around us in that beautiful, rich color. And let's reverse the direction of the circles that we're painting. Very good. Your space is probably getting really colorful. Let's dip our hands in that paint. And we can continue the circle idea, making sure that you're not bumping into anybody or knocking anything over that might be next to you. And make even bigger circles with your hands, extending your fingers as far as you can. And let's reverse the direction of those circles. Very good. And how about making a circle over your head? You can alternate arms, circle over your head. Hopefully you're feeling a nice stretch and warm up in your shoulder. Let's see what you can do behind, because often we forget about what we call in dance language our backspace. So let's see what kind of circular shapes you can draw with your colored paint covered hands in the back. Okay. Let's take our hands and rub them together, create some warmth as we wash the paint off our hands, making sure to get it off of all surfaces. Your elbows, get the paint off of there. Some paint could have splashed on your shoulders. Get that off, rubbing hands together. Feel that heat that the friction of rubbing your hands together is generating. And take that heat and let's place it on our neck, just to give yourself a little bit of warmth and help you relax, because when we're relaxed, we do our best work. All right, we're ready to begin. Let's start by gathering our materials, because we're going to move right into this project. We have a lot of steps that we're going to get to learn about, and gathering our materials. We have tape, scissors, glue, masking tape, which will be very useful. Your drawing materials. Here I have crayons, colored pencils, and markers. And then the basis of it all is our sheets of paper. Okay, I'm going to be moving some of my materials out of the way so we can get started. And the place we're going to get started, let's see, goodbye materials. The place we're going to get started is by talking about plant adaptations in the rainforest biome. You are going to get to review a PowerPoint that covers all the different biome classifications. And when I say that, please understand that science takes different areas of the world, and different scientists might decide to say there are 15 biomes or 5 biomes. So what you see in your PowerPoint, that's just one interpretation, trying to gather biomes so that we can talk about them. I'm only going to talk about the rainforest biome and my plant adaptations today. Please keep in mind that you will get a chance to choose which biome you're interested in and which you want to cover. So we're going to, as I said, talk about the adaptations in the biome, beginning with the characteristics of your biome. I'm going to turn my paper this way, and I'm going to use a marker. You might have might rather use a pen or a pencil to work on your biome. I'm using a marker so that I can be sure that you can see what I'm drawing on this paper. When we create our biome, we're going to write the name of our biome in the center of your paper for the mind map. So I'm going to write rainforest, and I'm going to make a circle around it. This is where my mind is starting, and now mind maps help us think in all directions. So the directions I want to think about are, what are the challenges, what are the stresses, what are the characteristics of my environment? And let's write down at least 3. So in the rainforest, one thing that plants have to deal with is that there's a lot of rain. And guess what? Right here in Oregon, we have the temperate rainforest. So I'm dealing with tropical rainforest, but okay, so I'm going to write lots of rain. And I'm going to draw a circle around that. Plants also in the rainforest have to deal with fungus that might infect the leaves. And plants also have to deal with getting enough sunlight. So I'm going to write low sunlight. Even though the sun is shining from above on all the plants underneath the very top story aren't receiving as much sun as they would need, or as much sun as the upper plants. Okay, so I have my challenges, my characteristics of a rainforest. There are many more. I've written 3, which is what you'll do. After you do that, then we're going to take a moment to envision your flora. Take a moment to envision your flora. We're still working in the mind map to do this. Biome, challenges. Now I'm going to connect some plant adaptations, which again, you will figure this out when you're reviewing your PowerPoint and when you're thinking and putting all your ideas together. How do rainforest plants deal with lots of rain? Well, one way they do it is they have evolved what is called a drip tip. And by the way, a lot of house plants are really rainforest plants. So if you have house plants, or if you are at the store and you look in the nursery section, you'll start to notice these things. Drip tip is a leaf that has a long pointy tip. How do they deal with fungus? They have a waxy covering. We also call that a cuticle. A waxy covering that's kind of like lip gloss, plant gloss, or a waxy coat that you might put on a car that protects them. It helps the rain roll off so the fungus can't grow in there and kill the plant. How do they deal with low sunlight? Well, there are a lot of vines that grow tall so that they can grow and reach up farther. Those are just a few of the things. So those are, or we might have very tall trees. So those are some ways that my plants have adapted, the plants that I'm choosing have adapted to the environment. These are the physical adaptations that plants have evolved to deal with the challenges of where they are. Okay, so let's move on to actually creating our flora. Today we're going to walk through the steps of making a tree, some leaves, a little bit of flower, and grassy plants. So let's start with making a grassy plant. I'm going to fold a piece of paper. We're going to do a fold and cut. I'm going to fold my paper in half and use that fold as a guideline. So I will just cut along this fold so that I have a nice strip of paper to use. And I'm going to fold my piece of paper over so that it's about as long as your pointer finger. And there I have another cutting guide, and you can draw a line on your paper if you'd like to use as a cutting guide. And I'm going to cut along that line. And this is, you know what? I'm going to make a longer piece. Excuse me. Okay. I've cut along the guideline using my longer piece. And now I'm going to make what we call an accordion fold. And that's if you're making a fan, that's that's what we can also call the accordion fold. And I'm going to make the accordion fold about as wide as 2 of my fingers. So I'll measure it like that. I often try to measure with fingers because the fingers are there within easy reach. So I'm accordion folding my grass, well, what will become my grass, and I'm going to be moving through this step maybe more quickly than you might do it so that we have time to cover all of our steps. Here's a little extra piece. I'm going to cut that off because I won't be needing it. Put it in the recycling. Okay, next I'm going to draw a W on this accordion folded paper. This is really important that you notice where I'm beginning and where I'm ending, because this is folded and we want to connect all the folds. So I'm thinking, how tall do I want my grass to be? Maybe about as tall as my finger. Starting at one end, I'm drawing kind of a letter W, maybe a wavy letter W. So there, I've connected both ends with my line. After I draw the W, I'm going to cut along the W. And when I do that, I will reveal my grass. Now notice I'm in a corner. I'm not going to turn my hand around and risk tearing the paper. Instead, I'm going to back out and come back into the corner. It's a really great technique to keep in mind when you're cutting in tight places. And you'll feel a lot more success when you do give yourself a little bit of extra time to back out of your corner. Next, I'm going to open up my accordion fold, and there's my grass. Now at this point, you can add color to your grass using whatever drawing materials you have, your pencils, your crayons, your markers. And when you do that, try to think of layering different colors. Maybe your grasses are red, maybe they're green. A lot of seagrasses are very reddish. Prairie grasses are reddish, and that's a plant's response to having a lot of sunlight. My plants are in the rainforest, so my grasses are going to be green. And after you've made your grasses, you can also trim them. You can cut them if you'd like to make them into something more like a clump. And then when you fold them back along the fold lines, you can stand your grasses up and you can arrange them the way that you'd like. You can also, in the same way that we've just cut paper and decorated it, added details with color, you can also make flowers that you can put on your grasses, and suddenly the grasses become flower stems. So be thinking along those lines of, now I'm learning these techniques to make 3D representations of plants. How am I going to use those techniques to make what I'm interested in? All right, so now we're going to be making a tree. And here is what we need to do. We're going to be going back to our paper and remembering the fold. So I'm folding the long edges, touching the long edges together so that I have that fold line again. I'm going to cut the paper. I'm just going to do this once. You have the choice of folding and cutting 2 pieces at the same time so that you end up with 4 strips of paper. For the tree, you'll need 3. So here we have our 3 pieces of cut paper. Our next step is to be scrunching the paper into long snake shapes. So I'm just going to pick up the paper and squeeze it all along its length to get a nice scrunched shape. And then I'm going to carefully twist. So notice I'm holding with one hand and gently twisting with the other. And I'm noticing that I'm trying not to tear the paper very much. So it's possible to just twist it right in 2 pieces, but that's not what we want to do. So I'm twisting the paper, and now it's in a nice twisted shape, and I'm going to call that shape a strand. Twist your other remaining pieces so that you end up with 3 strands. Once you have the 3 strands of twisted snake-shaped pieces, we're going to hold them together, and notice that part of it is going to become the roots. This is our tree. Part of it will become the roots of our tree, and part of it will become the branches. Here's a finished example that I'll lay down here so that you can see what I mean. So we're going to have roots, branches, and the trunk. And the trunk, again, is about as long as my index finger. So you can choose. It's actually a little bit longer. Your tree will, if you're making a tree, will be your very own. So you're going to get to decide the length of that. Moving up, I'm going to make my roots about as long as my pinky finger. So I'm going to pinch right here at where the top of my roots is. We're going to be using our masking tape, and I'm going to take a strip of masking tape and wind it around the top of where I want my roots to be to connect it. So now it's not coming apart, and I can easily work with these 3 strands without having to worry about them coming apart. So wrap it around. Now I'm going to wrap on a bit of a diagonal so that I'm wrapping and making it go up straight. We don't need to worry about making this smooth and pretty because it's a tree and nature has irregularities that make it interesting. And what I do want to do is make sure that I'm covering all of the paper with the masking tape. I'm going to wrap only up to the top of the trunk of the tree. This part will be the branches. I'm going to put one more just to make sure I cover the paper, squeeze it. Next, you'll want to wrap each of the branches and each of the roots. I'm just going to demonstrate how to wrap one branch, and you'll use the same technique to wrap your roots. So I'll join at the beginning of the branch, and I'll start wrapping until I have covered the whole branch. And you might find that it's easier for you to rip off several pieces of masking tape before you begin. When we have our paper all nice and covered with masking tape, it becomes pliable or malleable, which means malleable means that it can be shaped. And so you can see it, and it will hold its shape since it has the masking tape on it. The adhesive gives it a bit of a stretchy quality. So you want to masking tape all of your branches. After you've masking taped all of your branches up, and bring back my tree example, you're going to create the shape of your tree by moving your branches around a little bit, moving your roots around a little bit to get them, you'll see where you want them to be. Next, you can add color to your tree. And just as we were talking about with your grasses, that you can layer different shades of the same color to give your plant more levels of interest, or use different colors. You can do the same thing on your tree. These different tree trunks might have different colors. I'm going to choose to use crayons, and you'll want to lay your tree flat on your table, and you'll check to see if you have any paper still showing. And we're going to just layer the color. And this works really well for creating something like a tree trunk because it's naturally irregular and gnarly with places that go in and out, divots and bumps and things like that. So I am laying my crayon down on its side to add color, and then I'm going to go back in and see where I want to add different layers of color, and each time it just becomes more and more tree trunk like. Don't be afraid to really experiment and see what happens with something different. So I'll try a little bit of this maroon. You're going to also add color to your branches. You might see, you have 6, 7 different things that you can add color to. So you can experiment and ask yourself, what would happen if I lay down this color first and then go back in and put this color on top? So art is all about experimentation and then learning from accidents or making deliberate choices, but you have the option to do all of those things. Okay, next our tree needs leaves. This is not finished. This is just an example that I'm showing you part way. We're going to take, you remember that you had a 4th. I'm going to put my tree over here. My tree has leaves. And I mentioned the drip tip on the rainforest leaves. So my leaves have and will be encouraged to roll and drip right off the end. Some of my leaves also have holes in them so that the rain can pass through, and they have a waxy covering for their rainforest adaptations. So we're going to, again, with your leaf, it's the same thing, accordion fold, draw your shape, and cut. So you will decide, or you can just draw your shape and cut on your paper, and you can draw the shape of your leaf that you want. I need, again, leaves with a drip tip. So draw your leaves. You can choose to draw your leaves in different sizes or shapes. You can color them in before or after you cut them out. And again, remember your color options. You can pause the video, or if you're watching live, you can go back and review some of these parts. Okay. So you've added, after we add color and detail to the leaf, we need to attach the leaves. Going back to using our masking tape, sometimes we can use things for art projects that we weren't expecting to use them for. So we're going to take this masking tape and we're going to decorate it so that it's the color that we need it to be. So I'm going to take my crayon and I'm just going to color right on the masking tape, and I'm going to add a little bit of a darker color, and these are going to be the stems for attaching my leaves. So you'll color on as much as you need, and you can peel it off, and then after we've colored the tape, we're going to cut it into stems. I'm deciding that's a little bit longer than I need it to be. So I'm cutting it, and it can feel a little bit tricky, and it can stick to your fingers and things and make you feel frustrated, but don't give up. Just keep trying. It might fold over and stick to itself. So there I have my stems. Then you can take your tree, and I'm going to use one of my, there we go. You can take your tree and attach your tape to your leaf, and then decide where you want to attach your leaf to the tree. You can, when you have all your leaves, you can work with thinking about how you want to arrange them. Do you want to arrange them toward the end? Do you want to put them in clumps or put them toward the center? So that's a choice, again, that you get to make with where you attach your leaves, where they need to be. And I'm just going to choose to put these up here for the future. Please remember that you can also, depending on the kind of tree that you have, you can also cut flowers or other shapes. I'll just add this flower for extra added fun. You can add flower shapes to your tree. Whatever your plant needs. You might have grasses growing at the bottom of the ocean. So use what you need to create your plant, all of your plant life, the way that you've envisioned it to be. Okay, so we've created so far the diorama, the stage, and I'm just gonna, there we go. We had some animals that were here that are inhabiting your world. And now I'm sure the animals are really happy that there is some plant life to join them. So I'll just, it's really exciting when you can finally put the things that you've made together and see how it all looks when it's together, and see your world coming together that you worked through all of these steps to create. So let's just take a moment and reflect on what you've accomplished today. Let's again sit up straight in your chair and lengthen your spine and get all that space in there for relaxation and thinking. Go back through the steps that we went through, the planning, the thinking, the putting together the idea of what are the stresses of the environment, the characteristics, and what are the adaptations that have evolved as a response to those characteristics so that that plant life can grow and thrive in your environment. Thinking through that, your choices that you made, the steps, the new techniques maybe that you learned for constructing a 3D structure, and choose one of those steps that you're feeling really positive about, and think about the success of that step and carry that with you throughout the day. Please remember, whenever you're creating something, to share your accomplishments with somebody, with an adult mentor, a friend, family member. Let them know what you've been working on, what you're enthusiastic about, and show them the steps that were involved. Share your work, and please keep making art. Please keep making creative choices throughout your day. Thank you so much for joining me. And between now and then meaning when we meet tomorrow, you can go back over all of the projects that you've worked through, and we're going to think about how we can put that all together and share your work in being a nature guide. All right, so thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you again next time.